Good morning, I'm calling the session of the Board of Revision to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're in Treaty 1 territory and we're in the homeland, the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. And I'd like to introduce our panel. My name is Harvey Diamond. I'm chairing, obviously, and to my left is Mr. Jerry Sneesby, and farther to my left is Mr. Morris Therian. Our executive assistant is Kelsey Haas, and the city is represented by Lindsay Warham, the assessor. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision are requested have been described in each application. We will limit this discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or assessors make at this hearing must be sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to these matters must be sworn in or confirmed to tell the truth. Be advised that comparison of assessments of property assessments are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by the council and is independent of it and the city administration. We make our decisions on the basis of the evidence that we hear today and that alone. And after every hearing, we will issue a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or if the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to an application for exemption from taxation. Should a party wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with our order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm that all matters will be addressed with each applicant. Following swearing in, we will have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that he may have. The applicants may then provide their testimony followed by questions, and each party will have an opportunity to sum up if they wish to do so. Once all the evidence, each application is brought forward, the applicant may leave, the person will repeat for each matter of the docket today. The session will close after all applicants have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions, and will be forwarded our orders by written mail as soon as possible thereafter. All information is a public record and is live streamed and will be part of the public records. Thank you.
Please state your full name.
Lindsay Wareham.
And do you swear that the evidence you'll present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Mark Newman.
And do you swear that the evidence you'll present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Ms. Warren, you can proceed when you're ready to do so.
Thank you. So we're looking at file number 17-4838, roll year 2018, and the address is Memorial Boulevard. We're looking at business assessment ID 22929. We have a total annual rental value of $810,000 based on a stall count of 750 stalls with a monthly net unit rent of $90 a stall for an annual rental value of $810,000. This is the Bay Parkade. It's on the corner of Memorial Boulevard and St. Mary Avenue across from the Art Gallery. If you turn to page 2, you'll see comparable information. Parking structures, there are not a lot of them in the city of Winnipeg, so we have to present all of the parking structures. So when you look on page 2 and look at the range of comparables, you'll see a big range. We have a number of comparables and a number of different property types that are on here. Obviously 174 or 147 Provencher, comparable number 1 at $67.13. That's a 30 stall main level sort of enclosed parking area for a condo office building in St. Boniface. So that obviously wouldn't be comparable to the subject. No, comparable number 2 is the subject property. They're reporting $92.20 a stall on their mailer that they've submitted for the 2015 cycle, and we're using a monthly net unit rent of $90 a stall. 299 Fort and 35 Albert, comparables number 3 and number 11, are obviously the two premier parking structures in the city of Winnipeg that charge the highest rates. 299 Fort is the Winnipeg Square Parkade, and 35 Albert is at 201 Portage Avenue. Comparables number 5 and 6, 223 James and 180 King, are heated structures. They're underground levels, and they're under the Dynasty and Mandarin buildings on the corner of James Avenue and King Street. So they're sort of on the periphery of downtown. 170 McDermott is an unheated above ground parking structure. It's reporting a rate of $122.83 a stall. 136 McDermott Avenue, comparable number 4 is another, it's heated and unheated. They have some heated level, they have a heated level as well as some unheated levels for a stabilized NOI per stall per month of $108.95 a stall. 100 King Street is an unheated parking structure on the corner of King Street and Bannatyne Avenue, and they're reporting a rate of $143.05 a stall. Obviously, all of these parking structures have different locations and have different amenities such as heated, unheated. And what we have to do is we have to just show a range of what parking structures are reporting that they're earning in the city of Winnipeg, and then just speak to the superiorness and inferiorness of some of the properties. But again, 295 Memorial Boulevard, comparable number 2, is the subject property, and that is what has been reported on the mailer. On page 3, because we have a limited number of standalone parking structures, there are a number of parking structures that are in roll numbers with other buildings. So we can't actually derive an income from them for the parking alone, because the income and expenses are typically tied in with other things like rent for other properties and commercials. So what we do is we show what typical rates that are being charged for parking structures. So this chart is showing the gross rates, the daily rates of a number of parking structures in the downtown. So this is a number of information that came from the FNP websites, the InPark websites, and the Indigo websites, just to get an idea of what sort of rates are being charged for parking structures. On page 4, these are the InPark details for the subject property. So this is the Bay Parkade, InPark lot number 204. They charge a range of $155 a month to $190 a month. $190 a month at our typical 45% expense ratio that's applied for 2018 is $104.50 a stall. If you look at the 155 and apply the 45% expense ratio, it's around $85.25 a stall. So the net, using the typical modeled expense ratio that the city has of 45% applied against the gross rates that are charged, it ranges from about $85 to $104 a stall. And again, we're using $90 a stall. On page 5, these are InPark details again. They're just additional details that show the number of stalls of this parking structure. Page 6, you'll see the Board of Revision order for the realty that was that happened on October 20th of 2017. And then on page 8 and page 9 and 10, this is just the pertinent information from the realty brief that was submitted for this property. On page 11, this was part of the realty brief that was submitted. And this is the mailer that the owner submitted. If you look and you don't include the rental income of $44,000 and you just include the parking income of $1,584,367, subtract the total expenses and subtract the business taxes, you come up with an NOI of $829,791, and we are using $810,000 for the annual rental value. On page 14, you'll see the brief that was submitted by the applicant for the realty that was heard. And the remainder of my brief for BA is the pertinent information that was submitted by the applicant for the realty decision, or for the realty appeal that was heard. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Newman, do you have any questions?
I do. So you and I did this, as you've noted, through the inclusion of certain of the realty materials. You and I did this for realty purposes.
Correct.
And you noted the decision at page 6 of your brief to reduce the value from $11,315,000 to $7,811,000.
Yes.
And if you can just go to the second page of the decision, page 7 of your brief, it speaks there to the fact that the actual net operating income of the service garage of the city plus the capitalization rate of 7.25%, that's how that value was derived.
Correct.
And then the capitalization rate applied on the parking structure was 7.75. So that was an increase above the 7.5 proposed by the assessor.
Correct.
And did you do a calculation to determine ultimately what the NOI arrived at by the board was?
I did.
And is it about $571,000?
It is.
All right, thank you. Then page Page 17 of your brief.
Uh-huh.
This is a history of 5 years of revenues and expenses associated with the property, correct?
Correct,
And that again was part of the submissions at the realty appeal.
correct.
And then finally, the last number of pages of your brief, this is an engineering report submitted by the applicant on the realty, but prepared by Crozier Kilgore. And this relates to ongoing structural issues with respect to this parking structure, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, in a general way, what happened at the realty is that an argument was made that this parking structure has structural issues, give or take $10 million needs to be spent, and somehow that needs to be taken into account. That was the argument.
Yes.
And the board gave effect, I'll suggest, in part to that argument by fixing the NOI at $571,000 as compared with the $810,000 that you were proposing for the NOI for the parking structure.
Yes.
Okay. And to your knowledge, this work in terms of remedial work on the parking structure is ongoing?
Based on the information that has been presented by yourself and the outstanding permits that are on the property, I believe yes.
And the calculation of your ARV, page 1 of your brief, it's based on 750 stalls at the $90 you've spoken of. But the reality is those 750 stalls are not always available because of the remedial work that's ongoing, correct?
I wouldn't be able to say that for sure. I do know that there's more stalls in this parking structure because previously we had 830 stalls being assessed, and that, to my knowledge, large sections of the parking structure were boarded off to be worked on for safety issues and a number of things. So we had lowered the number of stalls to 750. As to what was reported by the owner, as you see on the mailer of 750 stalls, that those are the usable stalls that they have. That's what Impark has reported. If you look at the Impark details that I submitted in my brief as well as the mailer, it shows that they're reporting 750 stalls. So the potential number of stalls that are available are 750, and we always assess for those stalls.
So let's back up, because you've said a lot in what you've just said. You are aware that there is an area of this parking structure above the loading dock, correct?
Based on information you have given.
And I'll show the panel, and if the panel would allow me, there are pictures in my brief that will make this conversation simpler for everybody, and if the panel is prepared to look at what is page 3 of my brief, it'll make it easier for everybody, but
If you're using that just for purpose of examination, we'll look at it, that'll help you. If you want
I
to
think
refer-
it'll help everybody if we just
If you,
look.
if you want to refer to that in your
Yes.
examination right now, and your
Yes.
questions, absolutely so.
Okay, so then look at page 3 of my brief,
Okay.
of the attachments, I'm sorry. The bottom photo, that's the western elevation.
Is that on the tab? I'm sorry. Mr.
No, it's before the tab.
Before?
Page 3.
So like the page that was from my brief?
Photograph.
Realty?
Yes.
Okay.
I got it, thank you.
Okay, so the bottom photo, that's the western elevation of the parking structure, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And at the left side of that photo, you see those doors, which are a slightly different color?
Yes,
Those are the doors into a 2-story loading dock area, correct?
I believe so.
Yes, okay. And the information you've heard previously is that the roof of this loading dock area is structurally unsound, and therefore all the stalls above it are no longer being used, correct?
Based on the information that's been given to us, correct.
And you've seen photos, in fact, of that area boarded off from the drive aisles inside. Okay, I want to make a distinction between that, because that's how the count comes down to 750, because previously it was either 825 or 830. I want to make a distinction between that and the closure of stalls in order to do the structural work necessary to repair. So do you agree with me that the closure of stalls to enable the structural work to occur is different than the permanent closure of the stalls above the loading dock.
I will agree that parking structures, when completing repairs on properties, and will close a number of stalls to operate, to do rotating renovations, so to speak. For example, I think 299 Ford is a good example. There are a number of stalls in that parking structure that are closed regularly to do continuing maintenance on that property, similar to what this is. But the opinion that the city has when looking at it, we're still looking at the total income. So whether or not they have 750 stalls, sometimes it could be 730 for a month or two, sometimes it could be 750. We're looking at the income that's being reported, and that's what goes into the model. And if you look at the total income that they're reporting on their NOI, they're reporting 829,000, and we're assessing for 810.
They reported 829 in a single year.
They did.
What about the year before?
The year before was obviously less, that is a different year, but essentially the way the city does it is we bring in comparables from the if it's the 2018 reassessment and the reference date is April 1st, 2016, we use the 2015 mailer. And that's what we've always done, and that's our practice. So looking at the 2015 mailer and the practice that we've always done, they're reporting 829,000. This mailer is filled out by the parking people. It says that it's filled out by citypark.ca, which if you look at the owner on the business assessment is Citycom Inc.
I'm not disputing the accuracy.
Yeah, and so they've reported their business taxes on here. To my knowledge, what's reported on this mailer and what I'm interpreting from this is what's reported for the business. The business is getting 829,791, and the business is reporting a number of repair and maintenance. But if they were incurring all of these additional costs from the engineering reports, my question has always been, why are they not reporting it on the mailer as repair and maintenance? Because they have a large repair and maintenance on the mailer. So to me, what's reported on the mailer is for the business, and any additional reduction in the NOI or costs that are involved are capital costs that the owner incurs.
You understand the concept of timing. You understand that when they report 2015, they have to report the expenses in that year. And if they go and blow up the structure as they have in 16 and 17 and 18, those expenses will get reported in those years. You understand that?
I do understand
Okay,
that, but
just stop for a second.
But your engineering report is from 2013, and based on the information that you've presented, they've been doing this work from then, have they not?
No, this report, first of all, is from 2015.
Okay.
November of 2015.
Okay,
So it started in 16.
okay.
All right. Now, let me stop there. I don't need to argue with you through this process. I'll make my own submissions.
Yeah, well, absolutely, let you make your own.
Yeah.
So any other questions,
No,
Mr. Newman?
I'm
That's
good.
fine. Mr. Therian, any questions to the assessor?
When this was established, 810,000, you were saying the model takes all this into account, but was the mailer looked at to confirm that this was okay? Or was the process excluding the mailer?
The mailer was, for parking structures, this mailer, based on what I've reviewed, this is a good mailer. This would have been included in our modeling process. So this would have gone into our model for unheated parking structures.
But it's strictly in the overall, that it's part of the process to come up with the 810.
Yes.
Okay, now, I see that the repairs on the mailer is 126,000.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I haven't had a chance to look at the engineer's report.
Uh-huh.
Was that taken into account, that in the sense that this was maybe underestimated at that point?
The repairs are what the repairs are in 2015, and when you look at an engineering report that has all of these future costs in them, those are things that are going to be taken into account in the future. So in the 2016 mailer, 2017, those are things that are going to come into effect. So when those costs are incurred in 2016 and 2017, those mailers go into our model for the 2020 reassessment, because those are post-reference. Those are future costs. We're looking at a reference date of April 1st, 2016. And so when looking at this, we're looking at the income. Those future costs affect the income that's going to be obtained on the parking structure in the future. And we're assessing a business as of a reference date of April 1st, 2016 at an income that they're making. And we're actually assessing them less than the income that they're reporting. And those future costs are capital costs that an owner of the parking structure needs to incur to upkeep their property and their asset, whereas this is a business. This is an in-park lot. So I'm trying to differentiate between the future costs that the owner's incurring for capital costs to upkeep their asset versus the income that's being reported by the business. So I'm trying to differentiate that, because unless it's owner occupied, which I don't think that it is, and I'm not sure unless Mr. Newman has more information on that, you have to look at them in two separate things. There's a business that's being operated, but then there's also an owner who owns an asset. And I think that those are two different things that need to be differentiated. Because capital costs are typically seen and looked at as a cap rate issue, depreciating assets, repair and maintenance. Those are things that are looked at. And in my opinion has always been, if you're going to adjust something for a significant amount of repair and maintenance and capital costs, you need to either hit the NOI or the cap rate. And in the situation, the realty decision, they did both. And I don't think I agree with that, which is why I'm here defending the rate that we have on this, because I believe it to be correct.
Okay. I've got a further question, Mr. Chairman. On your, I'm not sure what page it is, but I guess it's 4, I guess. You referred to, because that, the way I understood it, was to substantiate your $90. On the first line, $190, we're on the same page here?
Yep.
Okay. The 45% expense gives you a net of $104.50.
Yep.
And then we look at the monthly again of $155, which less 45 gives you an $85.25. Now, you were raising this to substantiate your $90. I think we know that this parking lot has a lot of pay-as-you-go. So I don't know how much weight we can place on this ad, because I know we go in there all the time and park for an hour, 2 hours.
Absolutely.
So because you raised it as evidence, and I'm trying to see how much weight we put to this.
What we do is we use that as a cross-check. So because we have a limited number of parking structures in our system that we can look at, we try to do a number of things to cross-check our information, to verify the accuracy of what we're doing, or to see if there's any red flags that come up saying, you know, say they're charging $70 a stall and we have our model at $100. Obviously there's something that's going on there. So our model has $90 on this. The first cross-check that you look at is what they're making. It's $92.20. And then, so our model, because we model net stall rates, so net per month per stall, we also model an expense ratio, just to see what typical expenses are. We model an expense ratio for parking structures and an expense ratio for parking lots. And it's 45% for 2018. So since we model the expense ratio and what's typical, because like I said, a number of these parking lots, as I evidenced on page 3, a number of these parking structures are part of a building. So we can cross-check our expense ratio against gross rates to get an idea of how the numbers that our model's coming up with as nets, how they're performing. But because parking does have casual and pay-as-you-go, the only cross-check you can apply against is the monthly rate. So that's how we do it, is we do that as a cross-check, just to see where we're in line. And so when you have a range of the I think it was $85, we'll call it, to 104, our $90 is performing in that range with the monthly rates that are charged in that parking structure, as well as what's being reported. So it's just a cross-check. It's sort of a secondary piece of information. And there are a number of parking lots that have just monthly, just casual, and we always assess on a rate per month per stall. So if a parking lot, for example, only has casual parking, and we're putting a monthly rate on it, you're still putting a monthly rate on it. So I think we're just using it as an additional information and an additional cross-check to see how our model's performing. So however much weight you want to put on it, it's just another cross-check that we've used to try to see how our model's performing.
Okay. I think I'm okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sleesky, do you have any questions?
Not really, but just to confirm, you relied on the mailer of 2016, and also you took into consideration that the area above the parking or the loading dock was no longer usable?
The $90, we typically in this area for unheated parking structures, at a rate of $103.50 is applied. That's the model rate for the typical structure in this subject area. That's actually the rate for a surface parking lot in the area, is $103.50. So because knowing the issues that this structure has, we've sort of categorized it as an inferior property for other properties in the area. So we're using $90 a stall for a parking structure where a parking lot just next door is being assessed at $103.50. So we've taken into consideration a lot of the issues that are here. Because if this was a typical parking structure in the area that didn't have all the issues that it has, it most likely would be assessed at the rate that all of the other parking structures just a couple blocks away are assessed at, which is the $103.50.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't have any questions. Thank you. Mr. Newman?
I suspect all of us have had the pleasure of driving into the Bay Parkade. Many of us used to go there because when we were younger, we'd go to the Paddle Wheel Restaurant. That was on the 5th floor of the Bay. You can't go there anymore because it's closed. There used to be the Georgian Room. Can't go there anymore either, it's closed. Why am I telling you this? Because the assessor makes reference to the fact that this is an inferior lot. It is. What makes parking lots valuable? She speaks of 299 Fort, which is Winnipeg Square. Why does it get the rates it gets? Because it's attached to a complex of office buildings at Portage and Main.
Mr. Newman, here, aren't we just looking at income though?
I know that, but that's why I'm telling you.
Okay, well, okay, let's get there.
So, at one time, the major demand generator for the Bay Parkade was the Hudson Bay Company store, all 6 floors of it in its glory. It's now down to 2 floors. It's not the major demand generator anymore. Yeah, you might be going to the Bay store, but you might be going to a medical clinic in the area, that's why you're going in and out. And all of you will know that this parking structure has very large pillars, that getting in and out of the stalls is not always easy because of the size of the pillars. So when it's categorized as an inferior lot and therefore recorded the value of $90, I don't quarrel with that, that's appropriate. Now the question is, business tax is all about occupancy. That's what it's all about. And the assessor made the comments that you got a questionnaire, and I'm not quarreling with the accuracy of the questionnaire, just so we're crystal clear. This parking lot is owned and operated by the appellant, the owners of the property. The assessor, to me, it sounded like she was trying to make a distinction between the business and the ownership. There is no distinction. However, what this owner has decided to do is delegate their management to Impark. But they continue to own the business, which is the Hudson Bay parking structure. So there's no distinction to be made there. So at the end of the day, this is all about occupancy. And at the Board of Revision, you see the engineering report. I don't want to take a lot of time with the engineering report because I don't think there's really any issue about its content. But if you go to my tab A, the pages after that are numbered. They start with number 4. This report is dated November of 2015. The physical condition of the property is relevant, and it has an impact on the occupancy that is available in 2018. That's why the engineering report matters. Look at page 6. I've got it circled towards the bottom. Their budget was $10,147,000, most of it to be spent primarily starting in 2017 through 2022, $2 million, $1.8 million, $1 million, $1.1 million, etc. Why are they doing this? I'm not here to give you a lesson on what goes on with parking structures. Bottom line is, Moisture gets at the reinforcing steel inside the concrete, steel rusts, that's an expansive process. When the steel expands and rusts, it blows apart the concrete. That's called delamination. That's why you have engineers walking around parking lots carrying chain. What do they do with the chain? They drop it onto the concrete. When they get a hollow sound back, it tells them it's delaminated, it's come apart. They get their can of spray out, and with some red typically, they spray a circle around the delaminated area. They come along later, they jackhammer it out, except not on this lot. They use a hydrostatic process. They use high pressure water to get it out. They have to fix the steel, they have to re-pour the concrete, and then they put a membrane on top, and that's the process that they have to go through. And when they don't do that, what you have happen is what happened across the street. That's why you guys are parking all over the world these days, because you can't park across the street in the Civic Parkade, because nobody did what should have been done there, and it fell apart. Okay, enough about the engineering process. That's what happened here. And so the argument that was made in front of the Board of Revision on Realty was essentially, no buyer of this property is going to ignore the physical condition, take it into account. The board recognized that, not to the full extent we wanted them to. We wanted an NOI of $448,000. They gave us an NOI of $571,000. Very different than the 810 the assessor was pushing on the Realty, and different than the 810 ARV the assessor is pushing today. Why did they do that? Because they recognized work needed to be done. They recognized the buyer would not ignore that. They took that $10 million. It got amortized over a 20-year lifespan, but some of the work had been done already, and they were prepared to take that into account. And so I didn't get the 448 I was asking for, I got 571. And the board, in its decision, which is found at page 8 of my materials in front of tab A, the decision is based on the applicant's net operating income adjusted for repairs undertaken to date in accordance with the 2015 engineering report and a cap rate of 7.75. And the assessor said in her response to a question, there shouldn't have been both a reduction of the NOI and an increase in the cap rate. Well, I don't know, if somebody here is asking you to buy a property that needs $10 million worth of work, I'd say that's a pretty risky proposition. But I'm not here fighting about cap rates, okay? So the issue for me is simply, what's the ARV? And the Board of Revision, as the assessor has acknowledged, on Realty, said it should be $571,000. So my first position here today is, it should be $571,000. Why? Because the board recognized in its wisdom that there were costs that needed to be taken into account. But, and this is why I asked the assessor the question I did in Cross. When you repair parking lots, you have to close a portion of the parking lot. And in this one, because they're using water to blast out the concrete, not only do you close an area, which is the floor you're doing. So if you're doing the second floor, you gotta take those stalls out of service, but the ones below on the first floor also have to be taken out because the water pressure loosens up the ceiling of the first floor, water flows through, there's debris, there's chemicals, there's minerals in that water, and you can't have that debris and those minerals dropping onto cars below. So whenever they do this, they effectively close two sections of the lot, the one they're working on and the one below. That turns into an occupancy issue, right? So it's not as simple as saying there's 750 stalls and they're there forever. They're not there forever. And in 2018 and in 2019, because of the physical condition of the lot, this is the problem that this lot faces. The board on Realty recognized that problem in the sense of fixing the NOI at $571,000. I'm asking you to do that as well, to take that into account. The assessor made much of the fact that in 2015, the NOI, based on the statements, is $829,000, and that's true. And if you look at my page 9, immediately before tab A, so there's the spreadsheet of the revenues and expenses over the 5 years leading up to 2015. You can see the average NOI is $635,000. You can see there was a spike in revenues in 2015. They jumped up to $1,584,000. I said to these people, to my owner clients with whom I discussed this in detail, why did they jump up? And the answer I got was because of two things. There's a parking lot at 444 St. Mary, the old inner city gas building as it was called. Great West Life was a longtime tenant of that building, and when they have a lot of monthly parkers in that building, there's no room in that building for casuals, so they get spillover. I was also told that the University of Winnipeg closed 2 of their surface parking lots that are nearby, and that created some spillover. So there was a spike in 2015, and when you look at the history of the revenues of this lot, you don't see a number anywhere near $1,584,000. The other observation I'll make to you is that the repair and maintenance, if you look at the history of the repair and maintenance, $126,000 in 15, save and except for 2012 when it was at 108, that is well below what the numbers have been. There's a reason for that. They knew the repairs reflected in the engineering report were coming, and so they deferred some of the maintenance because it would be picked up through the process of what the engineers had reflected in their report. So all I'm saying to you is when the assessor says it's 829 in 2015, absolutely it is. That's accurate. I'm not quarreling with that. But that's not reflective of the consistent performance of this lot. And that's why I gave you the average of $635,000. So what I'm asking you to do, first position, remembering that we were looking for an NOI of $448,000 on the realty, I'm asking you to accept the realty of $571,000, sorry, the NOI of $571,000 as the ARV, as did the board on the realty issue. Alternatively, I would say to you, use the $635,000, which is the 5-year average reflected in this spreadsheet. A couple of observations, and then I will stop. I believe this $810,000 is fully model generated. It was not derived from the questionnaire. It just so happens that the questionnaire reflects 829 for 2015, and I think, Mr. Therian, when the assessor was answering your question, I think without question, as the assessor said, this is a good questionnaire in the sense that it contains a lot of information, so it's better than some of what they get. It went into the building of the model, but it was not how the realty assessment was derived. It was model driven, and similarly, the ARV on this site is model driven. I think those are my submissions.
Thank you. Questions, Ms. Warren?
I do. Mr. Newman, you stated in your presentation that this is an owner-occupied property. So the registered owner for the realty is HFT Parkades Limited, and the owner for the parking is Citycom Inc. Are you saying those two businesses are the same people?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have any evidence to provide the board today for that?
Only my knowledge of
Okay.
having dealt with them for 10 years.
Now, my next question is, the Board of Revision Realty decision. Now, you read it out in full. The decision is based on the applicant's net operating income adjusted for repairs undertaken to date in accordance with the 2015 engineering report. So, were you able to figure out how the board arrived at that number? Because looking at the engineering report myself and the issue, the amount of value that was there to date would have been October 20th, 2017, correct?
That was the date of the hearing.
Yeah, so
Yes.
to date.
Right.
But according to the engineering report, I want to find the page, so you'll just have to bear with me.
Page
I think it's
6.
page 6. We have in 2017 upwards of $2 million. So were you able to figure out the repairs and maintenance to date that the board was referring to in that order?
I can't do it for you mathematically,
Okay,
but I can tell you, and you and I were both at the hearing, obviously, that the board was very interested in the extent of the work that would have been done to date, because from their perspective, it was physical condition at the tax year, essentially at 2018. So they didn't want to ignore whatever work may have been done in 16 and or 17. And they took it into account in some way. The precision of the mathematics of their calculation, I cannot tell you.
okay, so there wasn't any evidence presented as to how many repairs and maintenance had been done to date?
Beyond what you see on page 6 and those numbers there, that's all the board would have had.
Okay. And you'll acknowledge that those expenses to date would have been post-reference income information?
They would have, except they do relate to the physical condition, and that's why it was always relevant.
I think those are my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sneesky, do you have any questions?
So what is the time frame for the remediation, if I can use that word?
Yeah. So if you look at page 6, after tab A, there is the layout by the engineers of the work that's going to be done. And what they did is they broke the work. If you look across that table, life safety, high priority, short-term, medium-term, long-term, maintenance, they broke the work into a whole variety of different categories. And you can see that there's a schedule, for example, under the long-term column, it starts with 2017 and continues through 2022. So this work will be ongoing over a period of years, in part dictated by the fact that in Manitoba, you can only do this work. This is an outdoor lot. You can only do it at certain times of the year. And unlike the Winnipeg Square lot, which is indoors, even there, they only do it in the summer. And the reason they do it in the summer, in part, is because that's when people take holidays, and that's when the demand on the parking stalls diminishes a little bit. But because of the fact that you can only do this work seasonally, and the last step in this whole process is the application of the membrane. The membrane is very heat sensitive, so if it gets too cold, they can't put it on. And therefore, it's gotta be warm enough still, which means that effectively, as they get into give or take mid-October, depending on the year and the weather, they need to be done with the membrane application. So it will go on over a number of years to answer your simple question in a more concise way.
Would you compare this to, I just was at the hockey game last night and the old Eaton's Parkade and the restoration of the surface on that parkade that has taken over 3 or 4 years. And I noticed last night that there were no barricades up, so I would assume the job is finished, so would it be the same problem?
I haven't been in that structure, but if what you observed is a process whereby, assuming they repaired the concrete, hammered out the old, put in new, then they sweep the surface clean, they put down typically a gray colored application which smells a lot, you really know when it's there, because there's quite an odor, it dries, and then they put on top of that what's called a wear course. And the wear course is something to absorb the wear and tear from wheels. And the stalls have a longer lifespan than the drive aisles do. The drive aisles get more traffic, they get wheels turning, there's grit, the grit grinds away at the membrane, so they put a wear course on top to try and protect it. So I very much suspect what you're referring to is the same process, but I haven't been there.
Are they sticking to the schedule shown in the engineering?
Yes, in fact, and again, I spoke to them in a very detailed way yesterday. Work was done in 16, work was done in 17. They're about to mobilize for the 2018 season.
Thank you.
Mr. Therian, any questions?
Yeah, well, my questions were along the same line as the assessor and my colleague here. Because I was looking at the board's decision on page 8, which adjusted for repairs on to date in accordance with 2015. I think you answered that. Do we know, just to be a little more technical, if anything was done in the first quarter of 2016? Do we know? Because I see on your page 6, on my follow-up, I can see the high priority and short-term is about $800,000. So I just wondered if anything had been done to your knowledge, because obviously you gave information to the board on the realty part, dealing with that. I'm just trying to, because the assessor raised the issue of the cutoff date, and I'm trying to, you talked about the physical condition, so I heard all this, but I'm just trying to get a little more.
Okay. And let me try and answer that. So my ask was for 448,000 of NOI, driven by the 10 million plus of repairs amortized over 20 years. Okay? They went to 571. So in other words, they added back about $123,000 to the NOI. If you took $2 million and you amortize it over 20 years, that's about $100,000 a year, roughly. And this is speculation on my part, Mr. Thayer, and I want to be clear about that. Again, I don't know precisely what they did, but certainly, they would have had in mind that a bunch of money has been spent, and, essentially, they added back to my NOI about $123,000, because they felt, I believe, on an amortized basis, that some of the money had been spent already, and therefore they were going to increase what I was asking for. Okay.
I think that's, I was trying to tie those pieces together if I could. Thank you.
Okay, so, Mr. Newman, I see your arguments insofar as the realty is concerned, and the realty has already been dealt with. We're dealing with business taxes right now. You have, and we have rental value that has been attributed, and that's what reflects the taxes. Have you got any expenditures for 2016 that show what your maintenance was in 2016, other than the engineer's report, which is not really evidence, it's just a plan?
Well, I can't put in the expenditures for 2016 or 17, because that'll be post-reference.
No, I understand, but you're asking us, though, to, in 2016, take into account the monies that were spent.
Right. What I'm saying to you is, and I come back to the fact that it's about occupancy. These stalls are out of service. They're not capable of being occupied. On the realty side, they dealt with that in a certain way. On the business tax side, I'm bringing it back to occupancy.
Okay, but you don't have any clear evidence of how many stalls were out of commission. You're just saying that stalls are out of commission at certain times, and we don't really have the evidence of what number of stalls or to quantify it.
You're right.
All we have is your client's own information that is indicated what they did in 2015.
And the plan of what they were to do in 2016 and 17 and thereafter.
Right.
Together with, if you come back to those photos, look at page 3 of my brief, the attachments before tab 8. If you look at that bottom photo again, I showed it to you for purpose of looking at the doors in the loading dock area.
Right, we saw that, yes.
But if you look to your right, you can see that there is all sorts of hoarding. There's all sorts of boards up along that west elevation. And again, that's to contain the debris created by the water pressure. So all I'm saying to you is the work was ongoing. The work removes stalls from service. That's what I can say to you.
Thank you.
What time were the photos taken?
These are the assessor's brief, so I believe these photos come off probably Google or the city's website, and probably these are 2017 photos or 16 photos, I'm gonna guess.
I would assume that, yes.
Okay.
I just
Thank
have a, redirect based on that line of questioning.
It's a redirect, you can go ahead and
Yes.
combine to the questioning.
It just has to do with the commenting on the hoarding and the photos,
Yeah.
and there was some discussion of current physical.
Okay, if it's redirect, ask your question.
Yeah. Mr. Newman, you referenced the hoarding and we talk about physical condition as of 2018. Is all that boarding still up or has it been removed?
Today it's not there because there's no work being done, so they remove it through the winter. It will come back up as they mobilize for 2018.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Newman.
Thank you.
That was a good start.
So we next have 330 Smith Street.
And then we're gonna take a break.
If we need one, we can.
Well, maybe we can deal with Altus and then we'll have Mr. Story after.
Okay.
Is that
I
okay?
can work with that, Mr.
We probably should have a break just so I have an opportunity to speak with Mr. Story.
And we'll give you the opportunity.
Perfect,
So
thank
you don't have to speak to Mr. Navarro now, though, do you? Okay. Okay, I'm just trying to get a handle on this, thank you.
I was to speak with Mr. Story prior to the hearing and he wasn't here, so.
Okay, so you'll get your chance.
State your name. And do you swear that the evidence you'll present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
My name is Navarro.
Good day.
We're sitting there nice and quiet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This one, when you're ready, you can begin.
Thank you. So we're looking at file number 17-5453. Roll year 2018, address 330 Smith Street, business assessment ID 33107, in Park Lot 125. We have 403 stalls on this property with a monthly net unit rent of $103.50 a stall for an annual rental value of $500,520. This property is 330 Smith Street. It's located on the southwest corner of Ellis Avenue and Smith Street. It's an in-park parking lot. If you turn to page 2 of my brief, the comparables, they range from $67.13 upwards of $166.38. As previously described, these are the parking structures that we receive mailers on. These haven't been chosen as to which one have been comparable. This is everything we get mailers on in full that's usable information. So $67.13 for comparable number 1 is obviously not comparable because it's located in St. Boniface and isn't a comparable parking structure to the subject. The subject is comparable number 9, 330 Smith Street, and they're reporting an income of $91.75 a stall. The comparables, this is an unheated parking structure above ground on the corner of Ellis Avenue and Smith Street. It's in close proximity to the MTS Center, so it has a good location with respect to hockey games, concerts. It's near the Burton Cummings Theater. There's a lot of draw there for casual traffic. A number of parking structures. The other unheated ones that we have on this list is 100 King Street at $143.05 a stall. We have 170 McDermott, which is $122.83 a stall. 136 McDermott has both heated and unheated, but a majority of that parking structure is unheated, and they're reporting a rate of $108.95 a stall. And then you have the Bay Parkade, which is reporting a rate of $92.20 a stall. So those are the unheated structures that have reported information. The other ones are heated, and typically heated structures are assessed higher, and they also charge higher rates per stall. If you turn to page 4, you'll see the in-park details for the subject property. We have rates of $175, $170, and $140 a stall. We have on page 5, they've listed 430 stalls here. On page 6, you'll see the board order that adjusted the net operating income. on the property. On page 8, you'll see the brief that was submitted for the realty for this property. On page 10, you'll see the mailer that was submitted. And I would like to make note, and I did this for the Board of Revision in Realty, that they report a net operating income of $547,533. There's a mathematical error when they added that up. I'm not sure how they came about it. But when it's actually added up, if you add up every single expense on that list, the NOI shouldn't be $547,533. It works out to $502,903.41. And that just happens to be around what the Board of Revision and Realty adjusted the NOI to. And then the remainder of my brief is starting on page 14, and then the rest of the brief is the applicant's brief that was submitted for the realty decision. Again, this was heard in realty between myself and Mr. Navarro, and typically for my BA evidence, I put in the realty brief, the realty order, the pertinent information from the assessor brief and the applicant brief, and I have done so in this situation, and the stalls that we have for this particular premise are 403 stalls at a monthly net unit rent of $103.50 a stall for an annual rental value of $500,520. My presentation, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Bear, any questions to the assessor?
Sorry, could you repeat the number of stalls again? Is it 403?
There's 403 stalls for this premise.
Okay.
So for M-Park that's being assessed, they're only being assessed for 403. There's 430 in the parking structure. For whatever reason, and I do have a note on this BA hasn't been appealed in, at least it wasn't appealed in 2016. I don't know going back any further, just because I did all the parking in 2016 and this was not appealed. Prior to this being represented by Altus, there was another agent that had indicated that 27 of the stalls could not be assessed to Imperial parking, and it was incorrect. I think that information needs to be updated, but the information we have in our system, M-Park is only being assessed for 403 stalls, although based on the information that I have looked at, M-Park has 430 stalls, because if you look at who's filled out the mailer on page 11, it says that Paula Prance at impark.com has filled out this mailer at 430 stalls. They've also listed their business taxes, which also indicates to me that it's been filled out by M-Park. And if you look at the M-Park details that I had submitted with my evidence that were part of my brief, there is 430 stalls also reported on the M-Park details. So I believe that we are under assessing the number of stalls on this property.
Yeah. If you could please turn to page 18. And you've included this as I included this in the realty appeal, correct?
Pardon me?
Page 18 was
Yep.
actually included by myself in the realty appeal. Now,
Yep.
in the previous appeal, you made some you made some commentary about how there's a difference between the occupancy and the ownership. Now, it's clear here that the expenses that M-Park has detailed are noting everything. Would you agree?
I believe it matches everything that's on the mailer. I would have to go through it line by line. It's a little bit more detailed than what's on the mailer, but I believe everything, we went through the exercise of adding.
Does your model account for business taxes?
In this situation, sometimes if the mailer includes business taxes, I typically include it. So for the Bay Parkade, as we spoke about previously, that $92 included business taxes. So
Are you aware whether the business taxes were included in this one?
I would have to do the calculation. NOI with business taxes, 91,725. They were, because if you look, and you take the NOI and you add it up correctly of 502,903, and then you subtract the business taxes of 29,000, you come up with 473,413.05. And if you divide that by 430 divided by 12 is 9175. And then if you look on my page 2, comparable number 9, I have 9175. So this information that, because I'm the one who verifies the mailers and I stabilize the information that goes into our model that our modelers then use, that 9175 would have gone into the model. That includes business taxes.
But yet you defaulted to your modeled rate, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions.
Mr. Seasby, do you have any questions of the assessor?
No, I have no question.
Mr. Therrien, do you have any questions?
Wow, I cheated a little bit because I looked at the appellate 430 and you're at 403, so that, I think you explained why. Now, I don't know if we'd worked 430 at 91, something what that would have done. We didn't do that, but I was trying to get a handle, well, I know how you got your 500, but that'll come in the next cycle, the 430, or what?
I'm gonna have to look into it, but I believe that that's obviously, it needs to be updated, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, Ms. Worm, I'm looking at your page number 1, and I see that the city based its assessment on monthly net rental per stall of $103.05. And on page 2, you've still a stabilized rate of $91.75.
Yes.
So why would the city not base the ARV on a $91.75?
Because then we're assessing all properties in a site-specific manner, and we're the assessment department, we have to deal with market value. So as I pointed out on my brief, I pointed out the other unheated structures in the downtown. If you look at, we have the Bay Parkade at 9220. We have 136 McDermott, which about 60 of those 200 stalls are unheated, and that's at 108.95. If you look at 170 McDermott, that entire parking structure is unheated, and that's 122.83. So when you're looking at market value for unheated structures, we can't just be assessing everything on what they're reporting on their mailer, otherwise why do we have a model?
Okay,
So-
I get that, but, and I can see that for realty. When we talk about business taxes, you're basically basing it on the income that's received, and that's really what the tax should be payable on.
And again, business taxes are derived in the same way that realty is.
Yeah, I
We look at,
understand,
we
but
look at
there is a
market,
distinction though.
there is a distinction, and we look at market value, but this is the information that was reported on income for parking structures, and we look at that as market value. I don't come into these panels and I don't make recommendations
Okay.
to go to site specific.
I understand.
I-
91.75 though, you agree is a specific amount that they are.
91.75 is the specific amount that they say
Okay,
that they're
thank you.
making.
Mr. Barrow?
I think you just made my case for me right there.
Well,
91.75.
You can still make your argument, because maybe I've got that position, but it might not be the position I'm gonna maintain.
Yes, I think there is a distinction here between occupancy and the realty. And I'm reflecting exactly what the occupancy is saying. That being said, if we were to look at this from the perspective of market also, I don't see that the property is charging anything below market here. It charges a gross rent, and I believe this is included in the assessor's brief. In page 5 of the assessor's brief, you can look at the rates that they're charging for this location. That is market. And when I say market, I say the rents are essentially gross. We're working our way to a net rent based on certain variables that we input into our methodology, but essentially what you're starting from is a market gross. So I don't think that there is anything but market being talked about here. I think in terms of the end value, we're not that far apart from each other to begin with. But I think this is a closer reflection of actually what's happening So in terms of the market value, I believe that 473,863 is appropriate. Now, we've calculated that over the 12 months, we've done that calculation and came up with 473,880. That's what we're recommending.
You're recommending 475,880?
473,880.
Okay, thank you. That's your submission?
I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Perry, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mrs. Leafy, any questions?
No, I have no question.
I don't either, thank you. Well, we'll take a break right now and
Yeah.
Thank
that'd be
you.
great. There we go, we can take their time.
Necklace, pendant?
Please state your full name.
Sid Story.
And do you swear that the evidence you'll present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have some remaining matters that Mr. Story's here on, and we can go through them, I guess. The first one is 295 Gary Street.
Yes. So we're looking at 295 Gary Street, file number 17-4984, roll year 2018, address 295 Gary Street. The business name is the Gary Street Parkade. We have a total annual rental value. I'm making a recommendation to reduce the total annual rental value from $621,000 to $490,620. I'm making that recommendation to correct this parking structure, for whatever reason, showed up on an error report, and someone had adjusted the unheated stalls to heated, thinking this was a fully heated structure. But because I know this structure, it is not heated. So the 138 is our heated structure rate for the area, and I'm just recommending to reduce it to the 103.50, which is our unheated structure rate for the area, changing the annual rental value of the unheated stalls from $521,640 to $391,260 for a total of $490,620.
Okay. Mr. Story? is that
Yes, I
acceptable?
accept the recommendation. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
any questions, board members?
No, thank you,
No,
very
no.
well explained.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Next, we'll deal with, I guess, the Forks Main Street.
So we're looking at file number 17-4945, roll year 2018, address Main Street. The owner is FNP Parking Limited. I'm recommending to reduce the 2018 annual rental value of $104,040 to $85,680. The mailer that I had looked at some previous mailers for this property, and they had been reporting 70 stalls, and we had 85 stalls on this. So I went out on Monday. Yes, on Monday, I had to think about that for a second, and inspected the property. So I went to the FNP office, and they had one of their site people take me into the structure because it's actually a locked structure. You need a fob to get in there. So I went through and I counted all the stalls, and so we are adjusting our number from 85 stalls to 70. We are still using a monthly net unit rent of $102 a stall, for an annual rental value going from $104,040 to $85,680.
Thank you.
Yes, we accept it.
You accept
Thank
that as
you.
well. Any questions, board
We
members?
accept Ms. Warren's stall count.
That's fine.
She's very accurate.
Okay, and you're happy with the recommendation?
Yes,
then,
very
so
happy.
that's
Good
that's
walk.
fine. And we have no questions then?
No, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for me, anyway.
Okay. And next, 170 McDermott Avenue, or McDermott, yeah, 170 McDermott Avenue.
There isn't a recommendation, but I would ask that we confirm with 54-1, if you don't mind.
Okay. And 149 Lombard,
Same situation.
okay, 54-1.
Oh, you're going fast, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, we're moving right along.
And 299 Fourth Street.
290, same thing, it's going to the municipal board for a number of years, so we just ask that you carry
So the
54.
three of them are 54-1s?
Correct, and two of them are accepting the recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll just have the roll numbers written for each of those, please.
Perfect. So the first one, 170 McDermott, the file number is 17-5129, business assessment ID 36078. The owner is 170 McDermott Inc., and the annual rental value for 2018 is $366,420.
Thank you.
For 149 Lombard Avenue, the file number is 17-5163. The business assessment ID is 50339. The business name is Vinci Park Services Canada Inc. Owner is the Westfield Grain Exchange Limited. The annual rent value for 2018 is $363,480.
Thank you.
The next one at 299 Fort, we have file number 17-4994, business assessment ID 41375. The owner is AX Property Management LP, and we have an annual rental value for 2018 of $1,752,180.
Thank you. That completes matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ms. Warren.